Well, that song only reminds me of our creed on the station, Isheoluwa Kolibaje. And a good number of people will tell you that Nigeria is such a project as well, something that God considers very, very important. So it's cause for concerns for many people who are well-meaning Nigerians when things aren't going where it ought to be going, and it's been like this for a while. For instance, at the beginning of the week, some unknown gunmen attacked a correctional facility in Owerri, the capital of Imo State, freeing inmates. Of course, you may have heard about that. This led to another attack on the Divisional Police Headquarters in Ehimembano local government area. Add to that the fact that ASUP began a strike. Resident doctors are also on strike. The judiciary workers, JUSUN, joined as well. Now, these incidents have sparked a lot of reactions from so many people during the week. Perhaps, Nigeria itself is on strike. That's what some people will probably even be looking at as well. So today we want to explore these happenings as it concerns you and every single person who will be joining us this morning. Let me begin with the studio guests that I have with me here. Chima Naji is a legal practitioner, as well as Biodu Showmi, who is a social commentator. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning, viewers.
Being a part of this. Let me start with you, Mr. Naji. Let's begin with that series of attacks in... Oh, by the way, I understand that we have another guest in Abuja who is Ahmed Buhari, African Union Agenda 2063 ambassador, as well as a former presidential candidate. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Buhari. So let me begin with you.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Naji. First of all, what do you make of those attacks on police facilities in Imo State? Now, there's a background to that, a tiny bit of a background to that. Earlier in the week, we hosted another one of your colleagues, G.T. Ogunye, a legal practitioner himself, who said that for as long as he could remember, it's like there is an attack on a police station every week in various parts of the country. Now, most certainly, that is cause for concern. But what do you make of that in the first place?
Thank you very much. You see, when things go wrong, there is the possibility that they will go further wrong. If you are sliding a slope on account of how slippery, in addition to the slopiness, there's some slippy substances that can take you off your feet. The velocity of your movement will be higher. And velocity means a serial repetition of events. If you are speeding to Shagamu from here now, and you continue to increase your speed, that means you are increasing your movement towards Shagamu. So when I hear people shout, why? The why has been there in the public domain. The why has been there in the public domain. Even the NSAS event and the frenetic manner it was cut short. Because if there are statements made by some professionals, if you have stomach upset that perhaps leads to your stooling, and you take a tablet to stop it, it's a temporary thing. You need to evacuate the system. Because those who are involved in either chiropractic medicine or some other alternative medicine will tell you that you must clear the colon if you must get healed. Don't have a blocked colon and you are taking drugs on it. It doesn't work. So when we are treating the symptoms of the societal problems, there is a nexus. Everything under the sun is connected. And that is the essence of research. Those who develop third eye, either through research or through illumination by wisdom, see the connections. Those who don't, they operate at their own level where they are stuck. And when things happen, they get surprised. For example, as it is happening now, people are saying, why Imo? Why Imo? Why not Imo? Is Imo not part of Nigeria? Like you rightly said that GT said it has been happening somewhere else. Yes, you might be saying, why Imo? Because you thought that Imo was so insulated, being a different part of the planet. It's a question of the child who stole meat in the house. If he's allowed, he might do it in a neighbor's pot. And then from there, he sees that stealing something means that you move from where you didn't have and get catapulted to where you just have something without any effort. He goes into car snatching and other things. So, my dear, the problem is here with us, and we are not addressing them.
So what's the problem?
The problem is there is a lot of injustice in the system. There is a lot of impunity in the system. It doesn't take the entire system to be bad. It takes one or two people who have access to where they can unleash themselves on majority. Take the case of the NSAS problem. We encounter very good police officers in this country. Some of them, when you are missing your way, they direct you. Some have given people money. There are reports of people, one lady, police officer, who paid for somebody's hospital bills. And she did not expect money. How much was she promoted in the media, except one or two things? But if she killed somebody, the whole world would have had it. But when you have the bad ones arrest you, I saw in the social media where one man was shouting on a police officer that he was trying to plant something on him so that he will have justification to arrest him on the expressway. How true is that? I don't know. But that is the truth of the matter. Those people who have these experiences, they cannot confront the police. But when things happen, they say, thank God, there must be something higher than the police. And that is not where we should be. We should be at a situation where we must work very hard to ensure that nothing happens to those symbols of state authority that help us to define our citizenship.
Well, you said that unless something is done, we're going further into anarchy. But we have been saying that for as long as I can remember. You and I have been, as well as Mr. Naji, we've been around for long enough to know that these issues have been on for good enough time, for long enough time. We talk about insecurity, and the only thing we have seen over time is the shape-shifting nature of insecurity. It started with, I mean, if I can go back to the 80s, the Maitatini riots and all of that, and then for one reason or the other, the armed robberies that followed, you know, even far back as the 70s, 80s, and the 90s, the high level of armed robbery, the Lawrence Aninis of this world and the rest of them, and then into this Fourth Republic, we've had insecurity in the Niger Delta, you know, with all kinds of kidnappings and the rest of them going on for one reason or the other, and then we have Boko Haram in the northeast, talking about insurgency, and then in the northwest, kidnappings, banditry, farmer-herder clashes, and now we have attacks on police infrastructure. So it's not new. We have been talking about doing something or getting to or have a worse end of the stick, and we are still having this kind. So what exactly is going on?
Yeah, there's a major difference in the nature of the insecurity which we had in the past and what is going on now. In the past is simply criminality, you know, when people who wanted to take advantage of society, or you have a sect, you know, trying to push an ideal, like the Maitasini and whatnot, or the Boko Haram insurgency. But when you look at what is really going on now, this is not about, pushing an ideal. What you see going on now is actually the trajectory is directed against the state itself, aimed at destroying the state, not about gaining advantage over individuals in terms of, material wealth, but it's actually aimed at the security architecture of the country. And that is the worrying part in the whole thing, because the moment you keep attacking the police, they will be less effective, they will have less time to focus on other crime, but rather thinking about how to protect, the police institution itself. So therefore, you're likely going to have an increase in crime. So what is leading to all this is quite clear. We all know the agitations in the country. Many people felt that the way Nigeria is organized today is not, is not enabling them to be stakeholders in their own country. And because of that, we've had so many calls for restructuring. We need to restructure the country. Now, from restructuring, we now see, agitations for breakup of the country. I don't support that, yes. But the fact of the matter is those who feel that they are not being listened to, by the government, constitute themselves into non-state actors, and then in an organized way, challenging the security architecture of the country. That trend is very troubling to me. It's not about criminality, because they did not attack those correctional facilities and the police stations with a view to steal money or steal gun. No, it's with a view to destroy them, to make sure that the state cannot be governed. And that is very worrying. It's a worrying trend.
Well, Mr. Buhari, you've been a presidential candidate once before, so I'm wondering how you would have handled this if you were president at this time. I also remember, on the one hand, the Northern Elders Forum are saying that the federal government needs to take very, very seriously all those calls, all those agitations that Mr. Shomi just mentioned for self-actualization, so to speak, from the different regions of the country. Juxtapose that with what the first PRO had said once, that some of the things that we are having now, which Mr. Shomi doesn't agree, are economic crimes. That's according to the first PRO. What do you make of all of these?
Of course, it's criminality. I'm surprised that Mr. Shomi trying to say this is something else about criminality. It's criminality. Everybody has got an agenda. Everybody has something that they want for themselves. We've seen what is happening in the southeast, and when everything was happening in the north, I reminded people. I said 10 years ago, all of these things that we're complaining about in the north were things that were happening in the south. And if you want to go back, I love the way I love the way you went back to history to remind us that we've never really had absolute peace in this country. From the times of Metasine to the times of the Manini and the armed robberies to the times that Lagos was nowhere to be at any time of the day because it was going to be armed robbery and things like that. So in my opinion, I think it's important for us to understand that, look, it's a collective. Everybody has got to come together to solve these problems. If you remember 7-8 years ago, the number of trucks that kept coming into this country with ammunition that we kept intercepting around Lagos, intercepting around the southeast, and the worst part of all of this is nobody tells you what happens after that. And even for the policemen who have been working hard, or the security agencies who have been working hard, nobody says, oh, well done, this is your reward. And you who have done something wrong, this is your punishment. The reward and consequence system that doesn't exist in Nigeria is the real reason why all of this is happening.
Little interesting that you go in that tangent. So on the one hand, you are saying that we all need to come together. On the other hand, you are saying that coming together hasn't really benefited us over time. Where do we go from here?
And that's not what I said. I haven't said coming together hasn't benefited us. I am saying that we've never really worked together for a common cause. And the reason why this is happening is because every single region feels there's a need for them to stand as an independent space. And it doesn't work like that. Unless we are working collectively for the common good of our country, we're not going to succeed. we are fighting a continuous battle. And I like the way the first speaker talked about how we're going down a spiral movement. The velocity is increasing, the velocity is getting higher. It is true, but hey, this is the only thing we can do right now to help ourselves. We must come out, we must speak the truth, we must stand in front of power and say, this isn't working. In my opinion, I believe the National Security Advisor has got to do more, because from what we are getting, before the Imo State attack happened on the jailbreak, the DSS warned the police that something was going to happen. About twice, there was a signal that came about 2 times to say this was going to happen, but the police could not do anything about it because they are inadequate to actually counter an attack of that nature. So again, look, if we're going to be serious about this whole business of insecurity or not, it's left to us.
Mr. Buhari, I'm wondering what else, who else could the police have called on, if not the police itself, to reinforce itself? Because every time there is an attack somewhere, it is the police that takes the lead. Just 1 moment. It's the police that takes the lead, and police always calls for reinforcement. If the police is unable to protect itself, and police has to protect the people, where do we go?
And that is exactly what I'm telling you. So if I am telling you that the police was informed and the police was unable to put itself together to quell these attacks, that means that we're in for serious trouble. That means the non-state actors have actually gained so much momentum that they seem to be stronger than the police themselves. And
are you saying that the police,
security agencies to collect?
Just a moment. Are you saying that the police is helpless against itself?
Well, with the attacks that we saw, what does it look like?
If Mr. Buhari will permit me, it's this kind of approach to the security problem in the country, trying to, brand everything, including agitations, as criminality, rather than recognizing that some people in different parts of the country, feel that there's a need to restructure this country. And this is developing into non-state actors organizing. What do they stand to gain by burning down prison? What do they stand to gain by burning down police station without going in to steal the guns or steal money? It's quite clear that, look, non-state actors are actually pushing the agenda in a different way.
If you say it's all about agitation, do you want to say it's the same thing when people began to burn, incinerate, and attack police stations in Lagos in the aftermath of the NSAS?
Yeah, when you look at the situation, for instance, permit me to just draw an analogy. In human resource parlance, there's what they call individual strike. That is when we all know about the collective strike, when trade unions go on strike. Individual strike is when you are not happy with your employer, you are not sick, you then phone in sick to disrupt, activities. Now, what you see going on is when people are so concerned and they have issues and they are raising it, the state is not listening, they feel unheard, they tend to take the law into their own hands. And we've seen a measure of that, in the Hensas thing, when even local youths turn around and burn down the police station, protecting their environment. That does not mean that a John provocateurs did not play a role, in terms of probably burning police stations to ensure that the state can crack down. I recognize that, but there are also instances where local boys themselves, misguided local boys decided, to take the law into their own hands. So if you take that to Imo State, when people are, the state must listen. When people are agitating, are concerned about issues, it is always better to have, a dialogue to see how do we move forward from here, rather than allow the situation to degenerate to the state that, like what we have now, non-state actors taking up arms against the state. That should not be allowed. We need to look at these issues and listen more, to the people.
Well, insecurity is one, Mr. Naji. You would also see that we are also managing all kinds of unrest in various sectors. In education, there is a strike going on, and we also hear that ASUP is on strike. Academic Staff Union of Polytechnics is on strike. Academic Staff Union of Universities, we understand, are also having that conversation, whether or not. In the medical, in the health sector, we have NERD resident doctors on strike, cutting across all tiers of the health sector. In the judiciary, that has also, activities in the sector has also been disrupted, and pretty much saying, look, we're attacking education, we're attacking health, we're attacking judiciary with strike. I'm wondering, and you said all these things are connected. The question is how?
Well, you just answered the question. I said everything under the sun is connected. Where you stand is in relation to what you see. But if you can see beyond what is within your vicinity, you will notice the connection and do what is right to either forestall the prognosis of a bad situation that you are seeing in your vicinity, or download it like you do on the internet. For example, as we sit down here, you are sitting down here in relation to this table. If you want to stand up, if you know about this table, you can see it as an obstacle that you need to avoid if you have to cross over or you want to jump on it. What I'm saying is the narrative that Show Me is putting across has some element of validity. But why I wouldn't want us to go that route now is that it will give the impression that once there is a problem in a locality, then it must be those people who feel aggrieved that may have demonstrated their grievances by going that route. You understand what I mean? Mm. There is a story that the tortoise said he will kill a pregnant woman any day the market is riotous. It turned out that one day market was riotous, but the tortoise did not even come to market, and somebody killed a pregnant woman. If you are shallow in your thinking, okay, you will say, hey, it must have been the tortoise. Intelligent person might say, okay, tortoise said this. Pick the tortoise, like police will arrest everybody around. Then you begin to investigate. Then somebody may also have done that in order to incriminate tortoise. If only tortoise will not be able to bring the alibi. So that is why I was on another station the very day this thing happened, the following day this thing happened. And I disagree with the former Inspector General by making pointed statement that it was IPOB. And I said, have you foreclosed other possibilities? It will be interesting to know who actually did that, because that's the only way we can have our sanity. You understand what I mean? If we don't find out what happened to burn your house, there's no need going to re-roof it. Because that thing that happened on Saturday can happen again on Monday. And it is too cheap to sit down in the comfort of your zone to assume that it was this person. You can make hypotheses. Even in science, you do that. But you test those hypotheses. And the process of testing them, in the case of this crime fighting, is you investigate. And everybody is involved in this problem, because if it is true, like Buhari said, that there was intelligence report to police by DSS and all, we see it in the social media, people saying that, but I don't know. I'm not privy to that information, except what I am gleaning from the public space. But if that happened, some people will also have to be held accountable. It is not going to be acceptable that a whole police headquarters, you hear that they are going to come to attack it, and you didn't do anything. There's a military base not so far away from that location. Police formation in the whole of Imo State could have been assembled to stand guard at the headquarters to prevent that attack. Now, if you are looking at the problem only from Imo angle, then we are missing it. I said, when you are going down the slope, you gather momentum. And that's why I said the velocity increases. And if there is something that is even helping you to slip off, God saves you because you have no direction anymore. The point is this. When we are talking about Abdulsalami Abubakar, the former head of state was talking about 6 million
illegal
light arms and all that came into Nigeria. What are the customs doing? Where should they be accosted? Is it even only on trailer? Somebody allowed them to enter. How many have been allowed before that were settled? Do you understand what I mean? So the issue is that you cannot say, if you see Mr. B, because it's my own, let him go. Crime is crime. The one that started by stealing goat may end up an armed robber that stands on the expressway. Because learning is progressive.
Okay.
It could be negative.
Absolutely. Mr. Buhari, let's begin to proffer some solutions. How do we get ahead of all these? We've talked about insecurity, we've talked about various levels of strike, and these strikes are happening in various sectors. And to the layman, everyone is going to mention government. Who should be getting ahead of this? Government is sometimes faceless if we do not, assign specific tasks to specific people. How do you think we should be getting ahead of this?
So government is not faceless from how I understand it. Of course, the reason why we're having all of these problems, I have heard a few people talk about, restructuring. This is what I think with restructuring. My generation is looking for a restructured Nigeria where there will be some devolution of powers from the center, where we will now have the local government really having to take control of its responsibilities, where state governors would have no interference with local government activities, where about 2 years ago when the president clearly said he was going to go on with local government autonomy, and then the governors came all the way to Abuja to now contest it as to not sure if the local government chairmen have the capacity to handle their states, their local government. We are still missing the point. I would have expected that as opposed to all of this kind of strikes, what happened when we can actually sit down together and say our strike is because we want local government autonomy to stand? What stops us from saying we are striking because we want to see that our children get free education because we work for government? What happens to us saying we want to have tax rebates because we work for government? It doesn't have to be on salaries all the time, because as you're talking about salaries, the market woman is there waiting for you to get it and actually increase her prices. But I think, and back to Mr. Shomi, I'm really surprised that Mr. Shomi will say an attack that happened in Imo, for example, is because some non-state actors are upset with what is going on in the country. The same way I'm thinking that Boko Haram and everybody is upset with what is happening in the country, or they have an agenda they have not told us about clearly. And by the way, the topography in Kenya and Ethiopia is very different from what is happening in the Northeast. It's also a shame that I'm hearing that the people in the Northeast are running around with their cattle instead of running.
How does this solve the problems on hand is the question I'm asking, Mr. Buhari. How do we get ahead of this? If we're going to solve the problem of insecurity, problem of strikes all over the place, how do we get ahead of it? How should government be taking the lead in solving the problem so that these different emotions do not get out of hand?
20 years ago, while I was still in school, I remember that people from the Department of State Security were part of the school system. I remember then people selling suya on the street were part of the security system. The DSS, or they used to call them the SSS at that time, will be the person selling tea or selling suya on the roadside, getting information from local people around to know exactly how to gather this information gathering that we'll talk about. But unfortunately now, I am seeing that the DSS, in my opinion, is supposed to be somebody, an officer from the DSS, in my opinion, is supposed to be the one maybe heading the National Security Advisor's position, so that we can have a good collaboration between those people on the street gathering information and their boss who's on top of it. But, the way it is right now, it looks like the information actually gets distorted before the right thing gets done. And in my opinion, the only way we can actually have this problem solved is if we're really honest about ourselves. Instead of talking about whether people are from region A or region B or region C, I think it's important for us to actually ask, do those people have the capacity to deliver what we want them to deliver?
Show me your final thoughts now, because ultimately, I mean, he talked about 20 years ago. In another 20 years, if we don't want to be talking about the same things we are talking about now, what do we need to do?
My point is, we need to identify criminality. It's quite totally separate from agitation-induced criminality. They are two different things. Go to any parts of the world, even in United States, in UK, you still have crime. There's no country in your world where you do not have crime. That's quite clear. But when you have the nature of the crime that we're seeing currently in terms of organized reaction by non-state actors, to destroy state institutions, I think we are going in a different direction. It is time for government to listen to the people. It is time for us, go into dialogue. You can reduce the criminality, the level of insecurity in the country, at least by addressing those concerns of those who are advocating for one thing or the other.
Okay.
So I think that can be done through dialogue, and the time is now so that we can reduce the level of insecurity in the country.
Mr. Naji, I'd like you to speak to the political class, because even security operatives have said that some of the unrest we have in the different sectors of the country are politically induced. What would you be saying to the political class to redress some of these issues?
Well, the issue, like I said, we are scratching the surface. The problem is lack of competent leadership. There will always be problems. A cook in the kitchen knows that sometimes the soup will overboil, but it takes the presence of the cook in the kitchen to control it. So when you have the system, even sometimes, if the cook stokes the fire, the kitchen will be set ablaze. Leadership in this country sometimes have compromised, even to the point of either by sheer inadvertence or directed hatred or exclusion of a certain group or categories of people. They cause injustice. And injustice in any shape or form will breed reactions in different ways. And they ramify, multiply, and they grow. And sometimes if they are not controlled. For example, if you have guns, arms and ammunition are raw materials in the hand of a criminal. He can use it for banditry as they want to define it, or armed robbery, or insurrection, and what have you. And some people can hire them as mercenaries. That's why I said, keep an open mind until investigation reveals which one, so that you will be able to solve it. But if you go with the homunculus, which feeds your prejudices, you will never get at the root of the problem.
Well, it's a good place to leave it, and only to say that we have only, to use your word, stoked the fire of this conversation to continue. Well, Mr. Chima Naji is a legal practitioner. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Abiodun Shoumi is a social commentator. Thank you so much for your time.
It's my pleasure.
As well as Ahmed Busari, who joined us from our Abuja studio, an ambassador of the Africa Union Agenda 2063 and former presidential candidate in Nigeria. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and thoughts.
Thank you.